Good day, everyone. So happy to have you tuning in and to watch, to listen to a topic that I am most passionate about and that my guest is most passionate about as well. And that is on the topic of executive business reviews, EBRs, and why I believe that every MSP should be making executive business reviews a cornerstone of their MSP growth strategy. My name is Stephanie Hammond. I am the head nerd here at Enable, responsible for all things sales and marketing related, growth related, working with MSPs. I'm joined here today with longtime Enable customer, Vanessa Chart from Technica Solutions. Welcome,
Thank you very
Vanessa. So Vanessa, you are the head of client delivery.
Correct.
That's your official title. Okay, perfect.
That's right. It's my official title, and it's really all about looking after the clients. And
Perfect.
this is where it's a brilliant topic to talk about the EBRs.
I love EBRs. So welcome. So I think just before we dive into our conversation around executive business reviews, I thought maybe we'd do a level set just to define what we mean by the term executive business reviews. I'm just going to start calling them EBRs from now on because it kind of is a little bit of a mouthful. But, you know, the way I define EBRs, you might know them, out in the industry as QBRs, quarterly business reviews, or strategy business reviews, or technical reviews, although I don't like that name. But basically, this is your regularly scheduled ongoing meeting that you have with every single one of your customers a couple of times a year, where you talk about their business, talk about their future goals, talk about their objectives, their plans, so that you can then determine where does your MSP best fit in helping them to, implement those plans, especially if there's a lot of growth there involved. Can their technology infrastructure today kind of meet their growth priorities and plans for the future? And I like using the term executive business reviews because I think it serves as that reminder of who actually needs to be in the room with you. We want those business owners, we want those senior leadership, those executive people at your customer site, but you also need, the senior leadership from your MSP as well. Hence, Vanessa being head of client delivery. We have a great big title in that room, because you are going to be talking about goals and future plans and the future direction of the business. This is all high-level, strategic-level conversations, and you can only have those kind of conversations with people that are actually that have that authority and can actually make those decisions. So, long-winded, but would you agree with that kind of definition?
Absolutely.
Vanessa?
Absolutely agree with that definition. Spot on.
Perfect. So, I know just in conversations with Craig back in Empower Berlin and kind of our conversations that we've had, you're sort of new-ish to the whole EBR process. So how long have you been conducting kind of this new, structured, formalized EBR process at Technica?
So it's actually been a year since we've introduced it, and it's pretty much as soon as Craig got back from Texas, when the Enable conferences, he brought a lot to the table, and the EBR really fell within my remit, and we just grabbed it and went with it, and it's been brilliant.
So what were you doing? Were you doing EBRs before, or what were you doing before?
So we were doing EBRs in a different format. So we would call it a client advocate status meeting. So it was like the check-ins with the clients, and actually a lot of the content that we do within that does fall within the EBR document with the current climate side, but it wasn't as comprehensive and structured as the EBR document and the EBR structure. So it's been in progress for a year. I've done the full quarterly cycle with some of the clients. So so it started off, first one in person, and then where you mentioned QBRs before, we started with the term QBR, but we just kept calling them EBRs because not every client wants the QBR.
So interesting question. So what's the difference? Is it just timing? Is that why you changed it from QBR to EBR? Or is it you're talking about different things or newer things between the QBR and the EBR?
So it's always the EBR, so it's the same
Okay.
document. Um, However, some clients, whilst we try to do quarterly business reviews, so EBRs quarterly, we can't
Okay.
always not it's not always received in the same way. So it doesn't the terminology doesn't sit well. So when we say, well, let's
Okay.
have a QBR, and it's 6 months down the line, so we
Yes.
stick with EBR.
Okay. And again, I think that makes a lot of sense because as you said, a lot of there may not be the need to actually meet with a client 4 times a year. I think it's you should be meeting with them at least twice.
Mm,
I think you would probably maybe tier your customers like tier A, tier B, tier C, and kind of figure out your timing and your cadence that way. But I think that's the other
exactly.
reason why I do like EBRs is because you're not setting to a specific timetable or cadence, but it's this idea of what are you talking about and who are you having those conversations with, and that's why I kind of personally like the term
Yes,
EBRs.
agreed. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So what was the turning point then from what you were doing before to kind of moving into this more structured, like what caused you to kind of take a look at your former EBR process or QBR process and kind of evolve it to what you're doing today? Because you're having phenomenal success today with it.
Absolutely. Well, I think you've got a lot to thank for that because
I,
um,
I wasn't going for a
I
compliment
know you weren't. I
there.
know,
So
but if you think of the actual turning point, that would be it. So um, we had a presence there. We went to Texas. Or Craig went to Texas. He came back, and he came back with quite a few different services from Enable,
okay.
and one of them was looking through the comprehensive documentation is like the many sheeted spreadsheets of the EBR, and we looked at it and looked at the process and saw what we were missing out in our status meetings.
Okay.
And then what we would do is we had a meeting about it. What resources would we need? So that's how kind of started. So we looked at it and said, how can we implement this into our current strategy to enhance what we're doing? That's the turning point. My role has always been to have these meetings with clients. We just needed that additional structure that you've
Okay.
brought and with the EBRs.
Awesome. So what was new from what you were doing before versus what you were doing or wanting to now implement? Like what was missing before?
What was missing before was the time element. So before it was okay, just an hour meeting, and this is what we're just covering things like user count, hardware, looking at current contracts, talking about tickets and services, and checking in with the client. It was all about checking in and just making sure everybody was happy and where we could improve or where we everything was going well and what changes had to be made. Even bringing in things like talking about Sonic wall renewals or just certain hardware renewals, end of life. That would all be part of what was with the status meetings. But what we've brought in with the EBRs goes more to that executive level that you were mentioning. So we're talking about the actual client. Have they got any changes, business growth? What are their plans over the next 12, 24,
Nice.
36 months? Then what we did is we added in a whole section for a risk review. So we needed to look at security, where we're going to bring that in. So whilst we were always looking at the security side from the service desk, this was an opportunity for me to take that to the client, not needing to have a technician with me, and just really laying out different steps of what to look at, engagement, training, tenant security is all laid out. And the beauty with the executive business reviews is that you've got that data and then you can track the changes. So a lot comes back from those meetings. So there's a lot of time involved. But then when you have your next meeting, whether it's quarterly, 6 months, you can actually see the changes. And the client knows that they're being looked after, not just from a service desk level, but from the customer side as well. From the
Right.
client, yeah.
Good. So you made an interesting point. So you said you can do these without having to bring someone technical with you. Like, are you very technical,
So I,
Vanessa?
I wouldn't say that, I mean, I wouldn't go into the back end of a computer. But I would say that I'm technical in the sense that I can discuss what's in the industry and how things will apply
Okay.
and fit in and the knock-on effects. but I'm not a technician, and so it's the head of technical overview here will take that, look into the security side of things, look into the
Okay.
tenant. So what I bring to it is discuss it with my clients who also may not be technical, and
Hmm.
they want to speak in a understanding of how it's going to affect their business, how it's going to affect their day to day, any downtime. They're not really interested in the back end and
Yeah.
doing settings and setting up policies and controls. It's more we do that by explain how it works and how it will affect them.
And that was kind of a leading question, because that is one of the concerns or questions or challenges that I will get from MSPs who aren't really doing the true EBR in the way that we're talking
Mm,
about it. Is, they'll bring with them all their patch reports, and they'll bring them with all these status reports, and they try to make it a technical conversation, or they bring the technical person in, and I want to say, well, no, this isn't a technical conversation. Like, you don't need to bring all those reports in. Like, I don't care about a patch report. Like, I don't care about a backup status report. I'm assuming you did it. Like,
yes, right.
that's what I'm paying for you for. So that was a leading question, because I do get that oh, but salespeople can't do this, or they're not capable of doing this, or they're not technical enough. And so I just kind of wanted to hear you say that, yeah, no, they're not technical conversations. So
No,
that
I
was
mean,
that was a leading question,
Right, well,
Vanessa.
I answered it well there. No, what I do love about the risk review side of it is just, for example, something called, there's a part of it called engagement and training. So we can see and we look at the reports. I mean, the clients don't want to look at tons and tons of reports, but whilst we do encourage them to have admin access on just looking at how the users are doing with the phishing simulations that we do and the courses that they're doing, those reports, what they're doing is they're saying this person hasn't done a user awareness training course, but oh, and look, they've clicked on a phishing simulation link, and it's all those. That's part of the risk review. So it doesn't necessarily have to go deep into, well, you know, to locking down tenants and locking down countries. So, but if I do need to talk about that, which I can, I will explain why it's important, and that's really what the client wants to hear.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's the, what are you seeing? Why are you seeing it? Do we need to make any changes, and how are we going to make those
Mm,
changes? Like, it's that level of conversation
yeah.
that you're having with them. So we've moved over to the new structure with your EBRs about a year now. What is Technica seeing from a benefit standpoint, like a financial benefit, customer benefit, operational benefits? Like, what are you seeing between last year and this year with the new
Okay,
process?
so the process, it does show a lot of benefits, and one of the sections that you've actually put in there if we say talk about the financial side, is one of the just points of conversation is, do you have any referrals? Like, can you refer us? It's something that people don't like to ask,
No.
and that there's a whole dedicated page in that EBR document about testimonials and referrals, and it's showing you don't be afraid to ask, and from that, and in fact from our very first EBR that I conducted, we actually got a referral and a client from it. So it was brilliant.
Just by asking the question.
Just by
Just by
asking.
asking the question. Lovely,
We,
lovely.
it's so financially, there's a technology budget within that. So when we have the conversations, we have the talk about what's coming up in that section. We put about, you know, what we've discussed, budgets, and then I find out when are you doing your budget review. So it's it does come around. It's all about the person. You can't just have a meeting, discuss it, and then leave it. There has to be
Yeah.
follow up, and for me, that's the key. So whilst we can have all these conversations with clients, if you don't push and continue them and follow up, they they won't be that effective. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, financial benefits are really good. So we get an opportunity to go through user numbers, and also it can be financially beneficial for the client as well. So have they had a decrease? Have there been any changes for them that has whether if it's great if they're growing, but sometimes it doesn't always work that way, and we also need to make sure that we're adapting with them. So organizationally, we've also implemented something called EOS, which also I believe came
Yeah.
from Texas. And
Can you define EOS just for
yes,
those that are listening that may not know what that is?
okay, it's called the Entrepreneurial Operating System, which essentially means it's a an internal framework that your whole organization works on to move in the right direction together with the right people and the right seats. And every week, the leadership team have a meeting called an L10. It's a level 10 meeting. And in that, and this is where the EBRs do have a good link here, there's something called a scorecard. So we have, as part of that scorecard, opportunities raised, and we have about whether any opportunities closed. And it's the EBRs that are really instrumental in putting the stats into the scorecard. So the organizational, I can't remember the other question you asked me. Financial, organizational, any other
Customer benefits. Has there been,
okay.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, huge customer benefits. They've been really well received. So when I start off, I will maybe email a client or just have a conversation, say, let's get one of these review meetings in. And the response is great. They're really happy to set the next meeting straight away, which is something that I do every time I set the next meeting. Whether I know it might be 6 months time or 3 months, but they feel that someone's looking out for them, and it's not just they're raising tickets with the support desk. They know that they've got me to. We have a discussion. They know it's with me. I follow up, and it's all documented, and then we recap it as well. So customer benefits, excellent. And throughout, my contact with customers isn't just the EBR. So they will contact me and I will then add details throughout the time in between into these documents. So something would happen today and I'll add it in even though I'm not having a meeting again for another month.
yeah, it's just a reminder. Okay, we need to talk about this or follow up on this for the next time that you meet with
Exactly.
them. Yeah,
And not only
perfect.
that, if I'm not here, it's all saved. If anyone needs to know what's going on, they can get into the document.
You win the lottery and you quit. Someone else can pick it up. Perfect.
I'm talking maybe on holiday.
Lovely. Now, I know in talking to Craig, one of the partners at Technica, he was telling me kind of as we were, saying, oh, you should talk about, should talk to Vanessa about this, that the financial benefit to Technica, you were running a little bit of a deficit, in 2023 and 2024. And because of what you've been doing and what you've implemented with the EBR process, with the projects and the new services and just, getting new referrals, he said you've basically wiped out your deficit now. Like it has been, transformative
It
that
has.
way from a revenue perspective, which is, I if you're not doing them today, I don't know if there's a better reason why you shouldn't start doing them tomorrow.
It's key to do this. Absolutely key.
Yeah.
I think, it could be for any business, but specifically for MSPs, this is just, it's an area that I think is just not being focused on in many companies. And, you know, it does take having a dedicated person to do it. You know,
Yeah.
it's that account management role, but with a twist. It's with quite a big twist. It's an investment in time. Having a meeting an hour and a half, 2 hours is fine, but actually there's a lot of prep. You've got to
Okay.
know what you're talking about. You can't go to these meetings and prepare 20 minutes before you walk in. That's just not the style.
Yeah.
And then the follow-ups, the tickets that come from it, the sales opportunities, even I go through approvers because approvers also change as well. And we just touch on those because clients don't realize that they need to tell us if anything changes. A lot of them do, but many people, it's not their
Sometimes.
priority. It's not their priority, but it's our priority. So they know that when we have an executive business review, that it's their time. They know that I'm going to follow up as well. That's one thing I do after every EBR is I do a summary document of what we've discussed,
Okay.
and that that just keeps it all flowing as well, because they can respond on certain points that they may need to sign off, and they don't really have to think about it. I'm already putting the action plans for them to follow up on. So, and then it's there that we review what we've done. But yeah, the process from doing this, preparation to actually having the conversation to then the follow-ups, it's a good 4 to 5 hours of my time.
Okay, I was going to ask that. I was going to ask, like, from a prep standpoint. So because I can imagine, like, I say in my training, and I do have a boot camp on this. I do say in my training that you probably want to allow yourself a good couple of hours just to immerse yourself and really, like you said, you have to know what you're talking about, and immerse yourself in knowing what you need to know about that client and their business, and understand what you don't know about that
Mm,
client, that business, so you know how to structure that conversation. And then I love it how you keep saying the follow-up, because I agree with you. The success of your EBRs comes from that follow-up and saying, this is what we talked about, this is what we agreed upon, this is kind of our priorities, because you always want to validate, you always want to make sure that you're on the same page especially when you send that follow-up, to say, yes, I do agree, with whatever you put in that
yeah.
follow-up time.
But it's not just, it's great for the client to get that follow up, but it's also really good for me, because I'm I can just flip back to what we discussed. I put that follow up into that EBR document. So I know when I've picked it up again, I'm lucky I've got quite a good memory, but I can't remember absolutely everything. So, and also if you're starting up, if you're a new person going into this, you need to have some time to learn the clients too. I mean, I've been here for 13 years, so I know a lot of the clients very well. And when we have a new customer, a new client, then I'm right there. When they've joined us, I'm checking in, setting the first EBR. It's really key. It's
Mm-hmm.
an integral part of just onboarding a new client.
Exactly, because it's your start as a means to go.
Mm,
And to do that for a brand new client, I say do that first EBR like 90 days in,
yeah,
because you're kind of checking how the onboarding process has worked. But then what you're doing is you're also establishing that this is how we run our MSP, this is how we support all of our customers. So we're going to meet with you 90 days out to make sure we're all doing well,
yeah,
we're on the same page, we're meeting your expectations. But then we're going to set another one in, whatever that cadence is, 3 months time, 6 months time. And because I would say that's probably one of the another challenge that I
yeah.
hear from MSPs a lot is, oh, my customers don't want to meet with me, they don't see the value in it, we're meeting too often, they're I can't get them to meet with me. So did you run into any of those types of challenges as you were starting to roll this out, and then how did you overcome that?
Absolutely. There's different ways of, every client is different. They all have different needs. I've actually had someone recently where we had agreed 6 monthly. They said actually we want it quarterly now, so they're seeing the real benefit. So that's been brilliant. So
That's awesome.
I think it might have been the pastries I gave when they came in, but
You bring food. They're like, oh yeah, I'll see Vanessa. She brings us food.
yeah, no, but it was good. But then I've had another one where I've had to also say, right, well, whilst I know you like 6 weekly check-ins, let's get this more structured. Let's make it quarterly. And so I've also had to manage that expectation as well, because sometimes having 6 weekly or monthly meetings, I think, can be too often and take
That's
up
a
a lot of
lot.
resource. And so we've had that cycle now, and that's worked really well. We've had more to talk about. And they haven't felt less cared about by moving it from 6 weekly to
Okay.
quarterly. And then we do have some that do not want to have the meeting at all. So in those
Okay.
instances, I will still do some of the work in terms of if we've got some, big news coming up, the end of life of an operating system, or a lot of the recent is charities with Microsoft. They're losing their donation business premium license. So even if the client doesn't want to have a conversation, I'll still tell them. So they don't, whilst they don't have to do the EBR, I still it is beneficial, but I will give them the information. But it won't be
Okay.
as they won't get as much out of it from the conversation.
Yeah, yeah, you get out of it what you put in,
Yeah.
right? So thinking about going back in time, you're starting to flip over to your new EBR process. Any big challenges that you remember having to go through, or hurdles that you had to remember going through that you kind of had to figure out, or what was that process like?
I think the big challenge was the technical resource, because when I mentioned that, the time involved in preparing for the EBR, that when I say 4 to 5 hours, it's not all my time. Part of that is taken up from our head of technical overview puts the risk review together. So that, and it was looking at where can we pull resource without taking it away from the service desk or from other things. And we found our way, and we set up our own process to do that. And these EBR, because what was happening was, if you don't structure when you're doing these meetings, and you don't give yourself plenty of time, then you can overload people. So
Mm-hmm.
I quickly learned in January that having 4 EBRs a week was actually not was not sustainable. And
Wow.
so as I was putting a lot of pressure on myself to do that, I realized no, that's too much. And everyone finds their way, because yes, you can have 4 meetings a week, but it's not the same
Okay.
for the amount that goes in. But so the resource from the team, having the systems in place, but we did overcome that. We created in Halo, we created an EBR reporting queue. So
Okay.
soon as I have a meeting and I've finished it, and then I set the new meeting, I will save a document, put it in the queue, and it's there ready to be scheduled for the reporting to be done nearer the time. So everything's prepared in advance.
Okay. So you mentioned Halo there. Any other resources that you're using to help prepare, deliver, um, use for your EBR process?
So last week was the first time I decided to use Microsoft Copilot to transcribe a meeting.
Okay.
Which, in fact, what was great about it was that my client was talking to me about it and asking me about it. So I said, well, do you know, I've just got the license. Let's give it a go whilst I'm having this meeting. And then I was talking him through, okay, well, this is transcribing. Let's do a little summary. And then and my summary follow-up, I tried it with Copilot, and it changed some of the way I do things, which I quite like the way I do things, but it gave me it just gave me some other tips, and I explained to him, well,
Yeah.
this was helped by Copilot. So that's one resource we've had. Halo has been brilliant. Um, and we're doing a lot more automation and reporting. So watch the space for reporting, because that's going to form quite a part of my EBRs as well. Because
Right.
some clients want to see ticketing report. They want to see how many
Oh,
tickets have been
okay.
raised, and SLAs, and who's raised the tickets and how many specific. So rather than going through the tickets and have a look, we're building reports for that.
Okay.
So I'm just trying to think of any other resources.
Do you like any leave behinds? Like I know you do your follow up email afterwards, but do you bring something to the meeting that you leave behind with them? Anything like that?
So, well, in terms of just like resources or gifts or anything,
Well,
because I
the
know in
pastries are
that's one,
always good.
no, because one of your one of the points in there that I noticed was that if there's a referral, put it there, send a thank you, or But in terms of leaving things behind, it's more
I
it's
didn't
more.
know if you maybe leave behind, like when you talk about the risk register, or a copy of their technology budget or the
Oh, I see.
technology roadmap or anything like that. Do you leave anything like that
Okay,
behind
so
with
what
them?
I do is, as part of the follow-up email, I put there, I actually list the relevant parts of the risk review that
Okay.
they've shown interest in. And I've summarized what we discussed, and I do it all by email, and I add the hardware report. I do list in there the technology budget as well, but I don't attach the document.
Okay.
I don't, yeah, they don't get access to the whole EBR document. If I'm having a face-to-face meeting, I'll show it and run through it with them, because there's some internal notes on there that I need to keep
Okay.
as well.
Okay. All right. no, I was just wondering there. So I guess just as a final wrap up question, if there is an MSP watching this, listening to this today, and they're not doing EBRs, or maybe they're not as consistent as they should be with them, what would be a couple of points that you would want to make to convince them that this should be, as I believe, a cornerstone of an MSP?
Okay, so the first thing I would say is take a look at your client list, map it out, even if you put it in a spreadsheet, work out when was the last time you spoke to them? When was the last time you actually had a meeting with them? And then look at that. So you'll see it. It's just so clear to see because I have an EBR schedule. Then think about how many times they may call you. And then I would say look at that, look at your list, put how many meetings you want and think, right, I'm going to start with this. I would, if I was an MSP, I'd say, you must have an account manager or someone that is, or even a salesperson. I don't know how everyone else works, but if you've got an account manager, look at their role. How are they doing it? Where will the EBRs enhance their role? Because, and again, it depends what level of account manager they are as well. So I'd say do it. Think of the growth that you want to have for your own MSP. Think about with client retention. So for me, client retention is kind of the key to all of this. You
Right.
want to keep your clients. It's very hard to win new clients, but you've got to keep your clients happy. It's not just about making money on the EBRs. It's not just about doing projects. And if you're just sales focused, I don't think it's going to work. I think it has to be all of that. It has to be, where can the client benefit? Where can your business benefit as well? And how you can keep that communications, build that trust, show that you care, because that is also very important, that the person that you're dealing with knows that you actually invest and care about them. But I would say definitely look at the EBR document, see how it will fit in your company, and just practice it. Choose one client, tell them. That's what we did the first one. We're doing this new EBR. Can we come along and go through it with you? Yes. We need an hour and a half, 2 hours. Do it, practice it, and then you will not stop.
And I think that's probably the best parting point you can make, Vanessa, is just start. And, that's what I say too in my training. Like, pick one of your best clients, one of your clients that you have a great relationship with. They'll give you some good feedback. I used to do this all in sales all the time. Like, when I was given a new presentation because I had to sell something new, I would always call like one of my best clients and be like, can I run this by you and kind of practice on you? Because they want to help you. And then you keep going, like keep scheduling those, because you've probably found that as you delivered them, you kind of take your micro lessons, right? Like you're fine tuning them. And so I'm pretty sure what you delivered in June of last year is very different, better, improved from, what you're delivering, say, this week. Like, how many have you done this week already?
So this week I've done 2.
Okay.
Yeah, I've done 2, and then I've had one cancel on me to move to next week. So, and when we talk about challenges as well, when the preparation goes in and a client has to move the meeting, don't feel disheartened, because you just have to say to the client, okay, well, I've done the prep. We'll just use that for next week. And if anything else comes up, that's fine. Or if someone's cancelled and said, can you move it to the next quarter? Take that prep and just say, that's fine, but here's a summary of the work that, of what we've put together, just so you know. So nothing's wasted.
I love that idea, because if someone knows that you've actually prepped for this meeting, it might make them think again and go, okay, well, you've already done the work. I feel bad that you've already done the work and I'm canceling on you. So I think that's a really good tip there, to say if someone's canceling, well, I've already done your prep. So yes, we can move it, or I can send you a summary, and it might get them to kind of rethink, well, I don't want to waste the time that she's already put in focused on my business. So I think that's a really good point that you raised there. Awesome. All right. Well, again, Vanessa, really appreciate you taking the time chatting with me today. Again, I truly believe, EBRs are very important to an MSP. Account management is
Yeah.
extremely, as you said, from a churn point, from a retention standpoint, it is very difficult to win new clients. So you want to do what you can to keep those clients and build the business with those clients. So I know Vanessa kept talking about the workbook and the template and the resources. So if you are interested in getting some more information on how you can implement an EBR process within your MSP, I do have a boot camp. I do have templates that Vanessa and Technica use, and they've kind of modified for their own, but it's a good starting point. So we will get that information out to you, or reach out to me on LinkedIn or send me an email, and I'd be happy to get those documents, those resources into your hands. So thank you again, Vanessa. Absolutely
Thank
appreciate
you.
your time, and all the best for the rest of 2025.
Thank you, and to you.
Thank you.